What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Assessment. I think this is episode 12 of season two. I am here with my co host Chu today. Raul is on a little vacation. He should be back next week, getting into the regular season soon. But Chu, what's going on? How's things going?
Oh, not much. Just preparing for the Panthers' final preseason game against the Bills. Might actually get to see some starters. So the fireworks are certainly about to be going off. What about you?
Fireworks, fireworks are ready for it too. Yeah, I don't think any of the Bills starters are playing. They definitely said that Allen wasn't playing, which is kind of a bummer because they out of the preseason they usually have one kids day and that's kids day for us,
Mm.
and sucks that they're not going to be able to see the starters out there, but should be fun. Nice little tune up before the season starts. We got a little bit of a different episode today. We're going to basically go through each division and kind of just give you our prediction on how we think each team finishes, and we're going to throw out like a fantasy player that we like from that team. It's not going to be the obvious Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen's and guys like that, but maybe a couple obvious guys in there. But yeah, just little tidbits about them. Shouldn't run any more than an hour. But before we get into that, let's talk about our choose your fighter.
Fight!
All right, so choose your fighter today. Just a basic one. Nothing, not even fantasy related. But who is your who's your Super Bowl prediction? Who do you got going to the game? Who, if you have a bonus of who they're playing against, what do you like there?
So last season, I had picked that it was going to be the Niners and Bengals going with the Niners winning. The Bengals season went down in glorious fashion, but I'm going to re-up that, and I'm going to say it's actually going to be the 49ers beating the Ravens in New Orleans this year. What about you?
I actually have the Bengals winning it, and I got them
Gotcha.
going up against the Lions, and
Oh,
not.
good.
It's I don't know. I mean, like it's the Jamar Chase stuff doesn't scare me at all. Obviously, they lost Tyler Boyd too. They lost Joe Mixon, so you think that the Bengals are kind of going backwards. But I think that like this is the year where Joe Burrow he stays healthy all year. He puts on a MVP performance. Just like talking in other chats too. Like I've been picking MVP or I've been picking Joe Burrow to win MVP. I mean, little spoiler alert, I got the Bengals winning the AFC North, so. I'm kind of all in on the Bengals this year, and hopefully they do because I got a couple rookie cards that I want to sell before he doesn't win one.
There you go. Speak it
Um,
into existence.
yeah, exactly. And then the Lions, against the Lions, I think that they're well put together. I think their defense is going to be much better than what it was. I mean, it really can't be too much worse. And another Aiden Hutchinson year. All right, let's throw Jamie's in here since we got a little bit of time. He says, how about the Packers beating the Jets? Interesting, Rodgers losing to his old team.
That's true. I mean, you know, I know it's frustrating to see the Packers be able to just pick another quarterback and just keep the not the Hall of Fame quarterback train rolling, but you know, to think about Rodgers, what he's been through since going to the Jets, I think he'll be able to get things right. He has a tremendous weapon in Garrett Wilson, so I think overall, I think the Jets are going to be at least for this season better for it.
Yeah, I think the Jets have that team. They really are just a quarterback away, and they were a quarterback away last year. I mean, they got some wins out of Zach Wilson and whoever else played for him last year, and they definitely upgraded the team overall. It's just there's a lot of rumblings about Robert Saleh not being the guy. I mean, like, yeah, I know the coach isn't the one playing the games, but is he the right guy to coach a Super Bowl team? I guess we'll find out. Let's get into the main part of the show. Basically, we broke down, not even broke down, but we got each division. Obviously, four teams in each division. We'll each go through how we think that those four teams finish, and then kind of go over a guy that we like from each team as far as like fantasy goes. So I got my list in order. Basically, I go east, west, north, south, starting with the AFC. So I guess we'll go AFC East. I got Bills winning the division. It was, I mean, not even to be a homer. It was tough because I could have gone with the Jets too. But Bills winning the division, Jets coming in second, Dolphins, and then the Patriots.
I'm exact same order. I have it the Bills and Jets being a 1-game difference, and actually I have the Jets and Dolphins with the same record, so it possibly come down to a tiebreakers, that sort of thing. And the Patriots are a distant last, and I think I ended up I have them finishing last just in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean they're probably a bottom 3, bottom 5 roster.
Yeah,
I mean, haven't really dug too deep into the 2025 class. If Drake May works out, or even if Milton works out, I mean, if they're picking towards the top, they shouldn't be looking at quarterback, obviously. So who knows where they could go if they're a team that trades down, if they have the 101. So it's going to be very interesting, definitely coming in the draft. But let's go. I mean, basically, it's just going in our order then. Who's your Bills player that you are kind of targeting in fantasy, or you think could have a good year?
Well, I know that he's got bit by the injury bug, unfortunately, and I think there's some concern he might not be ready for Week 1. But Curtis Samuel, I do think he's the one that could lead this wide receiver room, and I don't mean that by like leaps and bounds. I think there's going to be a lot of very close fantasy finishes between the couple of them having their respective roles. But I feel like with the OC, Ken Dorsey, coming over from was in Carolina one time and gave Curtis Samuel his best fantasy season. I think he's going to try and replicate that on a team that is kind of devoid of, again, no Stephon Diggs, even if he was kind of falling off, and Keon Coleman's there, but can he put it all together yet? I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah, I went with wide receiver too. I got Khalil Shakir. We've talked about him on this show a couple times. I think that he's of the wide receivers, he's got the most time with Josh Allen. He was kind of inserted into the lineup last year a little bit. I think that he can kind of fill that Diggs role to an extent. I mean, he doesn't run routes as good as Diggs, but not many receivers in the league do. But he's definitely a guy to. I think the chalk players on the Bills are going to be Dalton Kincaid and Josh Allen, and a little bit James Cook, because pretty much every running back is. But Khalil, it's going to be interesting to see the target shares between Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel. And then if MVS comes back healthy and if he makes the team. But I got Shakir there. For the Jets, I'll jump right in. I just went with Mike Williams, giving Aaron Rodgers a second. Yeah, I gotta make sure my daughter's not getting up. But getting Aaron Rodgers a second kind of strong wide receiver. If he could stay healthy, I mean, he's a 1,200-yard, 10-touchdown guy. And that's the biggest thing. And I got quite a few guys on my list that are going to be if he could stay healthy. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it goes. Obviously, Garrett Wilson probably going to get a lot of attention. Breece Hall going to be getting a lot of attention. But Mike Williams, I think that if he's the second wide receiver in an Aaron Rodgers offense, then I think I want some shares of that.
Yeah, I think I certainly, believe in that Jets offense. Rodgers being healthy. Believe in Breece Hall, of course, providing some steady rushing upside there. But in terms of another pass catcher, I like Tyler Conklin. He's someone who I think it could be, with a lot of tight ends that aren't the top 3 or so guys. It's kind of just touchdown dependent upon where they end up finishing. I think it's not crazy. I think that Tyler Conklin's in the top 15, which again is not a tremendous honor, because after you get outside of those first couple, the kind of the delta, the difference between like where they're finishing fantasy wise, points wise, is not tremendously different. But I think he's done well enough with just a litany of different quarterbacks, many of them not very talented. And I was going to get Aaron Rodgers, a guy who I think can elevate his game. And the one thing that he has done is, the best ability is availability. And Conklin has been on the field for seasons and seasons. So I think, he'll have that connection with Rodgers pretty early.
Yeah. We've seen some good tight ends come out of Rodgers. Who's your Dolphin?
So Dolphin, maybe this is just me wish casting it, but I said Jalen Wright. This might be more so looking at into next season, but I do think he going to have some flashes here and there this season where we see that he's eventually going to be taking over for the Jeff Wilson and the Raheem Mostert. I love what they did there, getting him as I think a pretty high upside guy. And I think someone who fits well into this with, if after this year it's Devon Achane and Jalen Wright, that's just ridiculous that they're able to just kind of keep that going and really get people that work well with that system. Yeah,
no, I went Jalen Wright too. Kind of hard to pick. somebody that wasn't Hill or Waddle. And yeah, it's tough because like he is kind of 3 or 4 on the depth chart right now, depending on what they do. We got over 1,000 players being cut within like the next week or two from down from 90 to 53. So maybe Jeff Wilson goes, maybe Mostert is a surprise, or he's traded to Dallas or something. But Jalen Wright, I mean, we've seen running backs that were kind of buried early on from the rookie year, but eventually they just take over. Like talent prevails, they take over. Maybe that's right. He is more of a dynasty stash than anything, but he is a guy that Mostert has had injuries in his past. A-Chain's a little smaller. Wilson's had injuries in his past. So if one of those or 2 of those guys go down, Wright steps into a pretty good situation. And then my Patriot, currently on the PUP right now. Don't know when he's going to be back, but and unfortunately his quarterback isn't there anymore. It was Mac Jones, but Kendrick Bourne. I mean, there's really not a lot going on there. Ramondre is definitely a solid choice. He's probably the only choice as far as Patriots that you want. But Kendrick Bourne, I mean, he just got a nice contract, I think, this past year, I believe it was. And, they're going to be down in a lot of games. They're going to have to throw the ball. And I think that if he's on the field, he'll be Drake Mays or Jacoby Brissett's best friend.
Yeah, he was a big upside guy last season. He had a couple of boom games, and I don't think it was all like a flash in the pan type thing. I think it's just was disappointing that he got injured when he did, because I feel like he was just kind of gaining steam. And my guy, who is really one of my guys from this class, and Jalen Polk, I do think that he's going to be the lead target getter in New England for whatever that ends up being worth. And I just think this is going to be a building season. I mean, for really everyone on New England, but especially for he and at some point Drake May. I think Brissett's probably going to be the starter. But I think if Brissett's they're playing maybe a more conservative passing brand of football, I think Jalen Polk's going to just feed off of that. But he can grow his role from there with what he was able to do over the middle and really kind of all over the field in college. So I think there's a decent floor for him, especially for a rookie receiver, not Justin Jefferson, not Jamar Chase level, but just a solid floor for a guy like that.
Yeah, I mean, one way or another, the Patriots as a team are going to throw 3,000 yards. So somebody's going to catch the ball. All right, AFC West. I got the Chiefs finishing in first. It was hard because I really like the Chargers, and I kind of want to throw one of those little upsets in there, but I can't do it. Chargers, they're missing a lot of pieces on offense, but I think that they have enough to finish in second. I went with the Raiders and then the Broncos finishing in last. But I think the Raiders and Broncos are going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting division. I think the Chiefs, it's going to be one of those divisions where the Chiefs probably win by 3-4 games. Chargers maybe have a chance to make the playoffs the last couple weeks of the season. And then the Raiders or Broncos are going to be competitive, but I don't see them there just yet.
Yeah, the only I was with the Chiefs, the Chargers. The only swap I had was the Raiders and the Broncos, and now they have a game difference between the two of them. Yeah, I do think it's going to be very close, and it's just going to kind of be. I think it all more so hinges on Bo Nix and what kind of a rookie season he has, because I think we kind of know what we're going to get out of Gardner and the weapons he's going to have. That's good. I think Antonio Pierce, there might have been just a little bit of just good vibes last season. Like once he took over, have those cooled off a bit, and like now you have a full season. Like what does that look like over the course of the full year versus just the mid-season? I come in, rah speech, build up the boys. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely be fun. That's always it's a division that I like watching. The Chargers and the Raiders and Broncos. We're probably forced to see more Chiefs games because of all the winning that they've been doing and all the primetime slots that they get. But I do enjoy a good Chiefs-Chargers matchup. They usually get a primetime game a year, so that's always fun. My Chief I went with is Rashee Rice. There's really there's rumblings of suspension. Is it going to be later in the year? Is it going to be? It doesn't seem like it's going to be early in the year because it probably would have happened already. It might not even be until 2025. He's got the most connection with Patrick Mahomes outside of Travis Kelce on the team right now. I mean, and the hype is Xavier Worthy. So going in draft order, you're probably taking Kelce first out of everybody. Then you're taking Xavier Worthy because you want the speed and he's looked good in the preseason games. And Rashee Rice has kind of fallen down a little bit, and I like that dip. So I got Rashee Rice there.
Yeah, it's, even getting this close to the season and still no suspension looming as far as we know, it's the value is still holding in terms of, he is still of value. I mean, in terms of being able to get him. And my chief is Isaiah Pacheco. He had a pretty strong season last year. I think we finally saw what we knew he could be. I think we just kind of weren't sure we were going to get that out of a Chiefs running back, period. But I think what we're seeing now is maybe a bit more faith in what Pacheco can take in terms of a role with Clyde Edwards-Helaire was brought back, but that was actually a bit later in the offseason. It's Deneric Prince. It's the dude that plays rugby. I'm pretty sure it's an interesting mix of people behind him, but I think they know what they have in Pacheco, and I do think that he has the very real possibility of being a back end RB1 just with volume and just everything that he can do.
Yeah, no, and really not. I mean, they're holding on to CEH for whatever reason, but there's really not a lot of competition there. They don't have Williams anymore. They could possibly bring him back. I don't think he's signed to a team yet, but as of right now, it's Pacheco's backfield. My charger, I got is Joshua Palmer. We've mentioned him plenty of times. I think you probably could have guessed that was going to be him. I think he's going to be the leading pass catcher for this team. They lost 300 targets or whatever. I think we mentioned the number last time or 2 times ago, how many targets that they lost between Eckler and Keenan and Mike Williams and all that. So Joshua Palmer, they got Ladd McConkey, second round pick rookie. He's going to definitely be effective too. And that's another one of those where Ladd is getting all the hype. I think he's going higher in draft as far as ADP goes. Palmer he's basically free. He's basically a steal. And unless you're looking at a depth chart, like if you're playing with like casuals and they're looking at a depth chart and seeing that Josh Palmer is the wide receiver 1 listed on there, like you can get him for basically nothing because nobody's like really looking out for him or throwing him in the queue.
Yeah, same one for me there. I think what he's been able to do, it feels like he's been in the NFL for like 5 years. Like I know he hasn't, but just his name just continuing to pop up. Whether it was injury to Mike Williams, whether it was injury to Keenan Allen, he was the one that just popped up and just fit in wherever he needed to and just continued to produce. I know it's a new regime, so maybe they have less loyalty to him than they do Ladd McConkey, the guy they selected in the draft. But yeah, at value, Josh Palmer, no question.
Then my Raider, it was another tough one. I didn't want to go with any of the running backs, so I went Jacoby Myers. He's kind of got the same situation as Palmer, except for the guy that's in front of him is a lot better than Ladd McConkey is, and the quarterback situation is much different. But I mean, he's definitely has double-digit potential. Should be the number 2. Actually, I can't really say that because they got Brock Bowers too. He should be the number 2 wide receiver target at least. So who knows what that means, especially if they're throwing to Bowers, they're throwing to Mayer, and they're throwing to Devontae. Maybe that's not worth much at all. But to get him in the double-digit rounds, 14th, 15th round in your redraft, I think it's definitely something to take a stab at.
Yeah, same guy for me. I mean, he's had a pretty interesting trajectory, after leaving New England, going over to the Raiders. And I mean, he's done tremendously well. And I know it's been a bit of a shakeup with the quarterback position. I mean, Gardner, quote unquote, won the job over Aiden O'Connell, but I mean, he did pretty well last year. Really, Devontae and Jacoby Myers did last year, considering what was going on with the team. So I could certainly see Jacoby Myers feels like that. The upside is like a back end wide receiver 2, but I think he feels like a pretty secure wide receiver 3 with like weekly wide receiver 2 upside maybe. So it's not a sexy name, maybe kind of like a Josh Palmer. But I mean, the points will be there. You just don't really know how they're going to come.
Yeah, he's best ball guy.
Yeah.
Last one for the Broncos, I got Javonte Williams. His name has been kind of negative in the media, but it's been positive on the field. Like he's been getting most of the snaps with the first team. He's been getting some good looks in preseason as far as like just checking the box score and all that stuff. He's basically been the guy, and I think that's going to be an indication of what we see going into the year. They named Bo Nix a starter, so having a running back on a team where you're the rookie, where it's a rookie quarterback, I'll definitely take a shot at that.
Love Javonte Williams. I'm glad to see another healthy season. I think he's going to get back to his old ways. A big guy that can move that well, that's that agile, that can work as a runner and a pass catcher. I know he's not necessarily viewed as a bell cow necessarily, but I think he does, as I coined, bell calf, kind of like a James Conner in terms of just like he can do a bit of everything. It maybe not at a Christian McCaffrey or at a peak Ezekiel Elliott level, but he's a very solid back. And my guy is his counterpart in Jaleel McLaughlin, not thinking that he will steal any meaningful touches from Javonte Williams, but I do think compared to what he did last year, I do see his stock and his number of touches elevating a bit. I think Samaje Perine probably cut. Not just the one drop he had in preseason, although that's not the kind of tape you want to have to try to stay on the team. But just money wise, I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin's being paid almost nothing, so it makes plenty of sense to. I forgot what the dead cap number is, but there's some savings to be had. I think if they release Perine. And there was talk of McLaughlin working on his pass catching in the offseason. That's definitely something he can do to be able to complement a Javonte well. And I think with Bo Nix, I think with that Sean Payton offense, McLaughlin's going to be not a Kamara, but he's going to be a valuable piece to that backfield.
Yeah, and we've seen Sean Payton run multiple running backs, so definitely some value with both of them. Going to the AFC North, I think this might be one that we're probably going to be like the AFC North and the AFC South. We're probably going to be quite a bit off from each other, so be some interesting talking points. But obviously, I got the Bengals 1, got the Ravens 2, I got the Steelers coming in at 3, and Jamie, close your ears, I got the Browns coming in at 4. But that's not necessarily. I mean, I guess it's a bad thing because there's only 7 playoff spots and 1 division winner, and then the other 3 got to fight for the 4, 5, and 6, or 5, 6, and 7. But it's going to be closer. I think they could all finish close to or above 500. It's going to. I mean, the division's only going to be won by 1 game. I haven't checked the schedule, so I don't know if it's the Bengals and Ravens week 17 or not, or I don't know if it's the Bengals versus the Steelers or whatever. Obviously, it is a division game week, or it's week 18, not 17. I know it's a division game week 18, but I don't know who plays who. But it very well could come down to that last game of the season on who wins the division and who gets bumped to 5th or 6th in the AFC playoffs.
Yeah, we are. What I know with, of course, we did choose your fighter, so I know we know how that would finish in terms of your division winner. I have them 2nd, so of course still making the playoffs, but I got Ravens, Bengals, and then I do have Browns, Steelers. It's kind of clustered like Ravens, Bengals, a bit of a gap, and then the Browns and Steelers are kind of clustered with each other too. I feel strongly about the Ravens. I know that Lamar coming off the tremendous season last year. I do think they can continue to build from that. Derrick Henry, I never understand what they're ever doing with their wide receivers. But curious to see if that can get sorted out, if Zay Flowers can grow from last year, Mark Andrews can be healthy, all that kind of stuff. And with the Bengals, I do see them, stepping back into, more vintage Joe Burrow. They figure out the Jamar Chase thing. T. Higgins is healthy and trying to play for a contract elsewhere for next season. But the Browns and Steelers, I really don't know. I mean, the Browns kind of finding a new identity without Nick Chubb. I understand he's on the team and they're going to get him back at some point. I think he will come back at some point, but that will be weeks into the season. It'll be more Jerome Ford, Deonta Foreman. It's going to be more pass-heavy team. What does that look like? Can they be successful with it? I don't know.
All right, getting into our players that we like from each team. Since my list is in this order, I'm going to go Bengals first. I got Mike Gesicki for the Bengals. Definitely, I think he could be a top 5, top 10 tight end. I mean, we've seen decent tight end play out of the Bengals in years past, but I think Mike Gesicki is probably the best one that they've had recently. He's a really good pass catcher. He could block too. He's been kind of on some not so great offenses in his day with the Patriots and then in the Dolphins. When this was before, I think they had Tua. But with losing Boyd, with Jamar Chase kind of being a question mark, even if Jamar Chase is on the field, Gesicki's going to be out in the field too. But if Jamar Chase isn't on the field, then that's going to just open up Gesicki even more. He's been going beyond like the top 12, top 15 tight ends in drafts, but I think he's definitely a solid plug and play, and he's a step above a streamer, but not like an every week play.
Yeah, I think he's a very exciting player. It's kind of interesting to see him going to the Bengals. I know, like with what they've done with the tight end position in years past. I don't think they've had recently a player with this level of athleticism at the tight end position in a good long time. But I do think what he can offer them with any uncertainty at the wide receiver position, whether it's Jamar Chase, I think Boyd was a pretty big loss for them, just in terms of a comfort. The combo of Yoshi and Jermaine Burton, kind of plugging in that third wide receiver position, I think can be helpful for them. But yeah, Gesicki has a pretty tremendous upside. For me, I actually did have Jermaine Burton. He's a guy where it's more of a dynasty play than it is this season type of play. I think some things will have to happen for him to get more relevancy. And I think at a minimum, what he can do is build this season, maybe have, a couple of, 2-3 catch games, one's a deep gain, and kind of feel one dimensional, but kind of grow from there and be able to take over T. Higgins's role once he ultimately is going to be leaving the team next year, I would assume.
Yeah, between him and I forgot the other guy's name, but they're definitely their third wide receiver is up for grabs and potentially could move into the second wide receiver role by 2025. For the Ravens, I got the only tight end that you probably want to handcuff in the league, Isaiah Likely. Should be on the field more, and especially with Derrick Henry there, kind of want to block for him a little bit more. Their regular offensive line, I think, got a downgrade this offseason. They lost some key pieces, but Likely he's a guy that if Andrews misses time, he's definitely a guy that's going to be like, if he's on free agency, you're dropping all of your fab on him. Or if Andrews is in, the Ravens really didn't do a lot to the wide receiver room per se. So, they basically have the same three guys that they had last year. Zay Flowers is probably going to be better than what he was last year, but Bateman might be the last year with them. Nelson Aguilar, who had some games here and there, but isn't really consistent. Isaiah Likely could probably slide in and be like the fourth leading target guy on the team. Even if everybody's healthy, I think he could be the fourth leading target guy on the team, which isn't saying much. You don't want to hope for injury, but it's definitely something that you could either trade him for a lot if Andrews goes down, or just hold on to him and see if Andrews goes down.
Yeah, Likely is one where I know kind of how I see the Steelers being kind of a wide receiver factory. I feel like the Ravens, for the last decade plus, have been just a tight end factory of, what do they have? Hayden Hurst? Do they have a number of other ones that just kind of are in and out? They hold on to the best one at the time, keep going through that. So he's definitely a good target to have. And mine is a little bit different. I would go really obscure and pick Russell Gage, hoping that he picks back up the pieces from his. That it was like 4 years ago, I want to say, with the Falcons playing well. But without saying that, I'm going to go with a more household name in Justice Hill. So he's kind of the tried and true, the trusted backup running back in Baltimore. There's been some good nonsensical coach speak about him and how they trust him. I know he and really no one else is at all a substitute for Derrick Henry. But I think we saw a little bit last season of what Justice Hill could do in terms of filling in, whether it be injury in front of him or just being a complimentary back to whoever's in front of him as well. And he's a good handcuff, not for tremendous upside, but just we know the type of volume that they like to run in Baltimore and not just with Lamar. So I do trust that he would be a pretty cheap get, and in certain weeks could be pretty valuable.
Yeah, I've had some people compare him to like a poor man's Alvin Kamara, like just little scat back out of the backfield, but can catch the ball. He just really hasn't, I don't know if he just hasn't had the opportunity. There's always been a Dobbins or a Gus Edwards in his way, and then he's been hurt a little bit, but obviously with Derrick Henry there, he's not going to have that role either, but if we get 16, 17 games out of him, we might be surprised.
Yep.
For my Steeler, I got Van Jefferson. I liked him when he was on the Rams. I believe they got him in a trade too. So they actually got some capital into him. Everybody's going after George Pickens, and then Pat Fryermuth is a top guy that people are getting. But Van Jefferson, Russell Wilson has been named the starter. I think that was just yesterday that they actually officially named it. Obviously, there's the threat of Justin Fields potentially taking over if things go south, and everything is possible. But Russ has supported multiple wide receivers in the past. I mean, he had, I don't remember what Judy did last year, but I mean, he's had a couple of years with Judy and Sutton, and then he's had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He's had Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett. So I mean, he could definitely support multiple wide receivers. I think Van Jefferson is pretty sneaky. He's a best ball or flex play, or play him in a favorable like matchup against a bad secondary, but definitely a guy that you could get basically after the draft. You don't even have to draft him.
Yeah, he's a good name. Where I mean, I remember him back in LA having having the one good season. Oh, is this his year? It never really turned out that way. Eventually getting traded. So glad he's getting an opportunity to play elsewhere, and hopefully can turn it around. He's definitely poised to take a second spot. And my guy is one of the ones you mentioned there in Pat Fryermuth. He can work all over the field, but I know he's just an absolute red zone threat. And I don't think that Russell Wilson wants to think of that one red zone throw where they should have run it back when he was in Seattle. But I think it might turn out a little more fruitful this time, throwing to Pat Fryermuth. I know he battled with injury last season, that plus just some atrocious quarterback play. So I think they can right the ship this season. And kind of like with what you were talking about, they've got George Pickens, but there's not another true de facto number two. Is it Van Jefferson? Is it Calvin Austin? I don't think it's Calvin Austin. But Pat Fryermuth, I think can get back to his target volume of not last season, but the one before, and can be a pretty set it and forget it top 10, top 12 tight end.
All right. And the last team that I got in this division, got the Browns, going with another guy that was actually, I think all three of their wide receivers have been traded for, but the one I'm going with is Jerry Jeudy. He is one of the better route runners in the league. Whether it's, I mean, obviously it's going to be Watson. The money says it's going to be Watson. There's no reason that Watson shouldn't play. But if all goes south and they have to put another quarterback in, it's Jameis Winston. So he could definitely sling the ball there too. But I mean, Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy might be one of the best duos of route runners that the league has. Both could get open, both could get separation. Jerry Jeudy coming over in a trade, so again, there's some capital that was involved in bringing him over. Maybe we get a rejuvenation from him, and again, he's another guy that you can get in the double-digit rounds or basically free. Like, he might get drafted because of his name, but also at the same time, he really hasn't been the greatest. So people are going to maybe pass over him and not want a Browns wide receiver and go with somebody else, and you just snag him up.
Yeah, I like him there a lot. I think it was a good get for them. It's interesting how the Browns have built their wide receiver room in the last couple of years. It's just, no, we'll just go get them. Like, we're not going to develop any receivers. We're just going to go get them and hope they can figure it out here in Cleveland. But I mean, in the last 2 or so years, they've gotten a good group there, which is pretty interesting. And I think led by Amari Cooper, it's a pretty solid room. And who I'm looking at is back in the backfield, and that is Jerome Ford. I know I was talking about, I do believe it's going to be a more pass-heavy offense this season compared to the Nick Chubb era. Doesn't mean that Jerome Ford didn't perform admirably last year, and doesn't mean that he can't do so again this season, at least in the beginning. Again, I do expect Nick Chubb back at some point, but when that is, I don't know to what quality that is. I also don't know that. And without trying to guess when that's going to happen or how good he's going to be, I'm just going to trust that Jerome Ford's going to be there healthy week 1, and we've seen what he can do with this team. So I trust him as a kind of a Chuba Hubbard-esque type of player, where I know he's going to be starting in the beginning, but once the other guy is back healthy, we don't really know what we're getting, but you get a couple weeks out of him.
All right. And going into the AFC South, our last AFC division, I got the Texans finishing first. Then I got the Colts. Then I got the Titans, and then the Jags.
Whoa. All right. So I've got the Texans, the Colts, the Jaguars, and then I have the Titans pulling up the caboose there.
You got the Titans as like a bottom 5 team down there with the Patriots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More
I don't know,
the
man.
I guess it'd be like the top of the bottom, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so not like it's like the Patriots and Titans are battling, but it's more of like they are the 5th from the bottom, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I know they've lost some pieces on defense, but their offense, I think, is gonna. It obviously goes through Levis, but their offense is gonna. I think it's gonna be all right. I think they'll win some games just because they can score points. But starting at the top, the Texans, super sleeper here. News came that, I mean, it wasn't even like huge news as far as like fantasy relevant, but like Dalton Keene was placed on IR, so I think that jumps up Cade Stover a little bit. It's another tight end. Obviously, they got Dalton Schultz. They have he's got a pretty decent contract too. But Stover and Stroud played together. I think they've hooked up a couple times in the preseason and in camp. So God forbid if any injury happens to Schultz, Stover, I think steps in. You got Brevin Jordan there too, but I think that like his time has passed. He might not even make it by the time we record our next episode. Might not even be on the team anymore. But it was hard to pick somebody from here because like if you look at their roster, it is stacked. Like you can't just like, I mean, I could have said Mixon, could have said Tank Dell, but I think like all those guys are just cop outs. Like, I mean, Stroud could throw for like 6,000 yards this year because he has so many weapons to throw it to. But Stover, more of a dynasty stash. Again, Schultz is locked up for a couple of years, so who knows if he gets his chance. But he's a guy that you can just grab later and just hope that he gets some time on the field.
Yeah, that's definitely a good stash, and having him behind Schultz. I know Schultz got locked up with a good contract there, but I mean, there's already a trust there with Ian Stroud, so I certainly understand keeping continuity. They're obviously surrounding him with as many weapons as he can right now to see if they can go chase a ring. The one I was picking, one of the bigger names you were mentioning, Joe Mixon, him leaving Cincy, I felt like for the last couple of years, as we see his efficiency fall. I mean, the volume stayed there. He'd have his random blow up game, the multi-touchdown game, the one that wins people fantasy weeks. And, I'm not here to say that his efficiency is not falling off, but what I am here to say is, him being available to take the brunt of the work is something that he can do. I mean, it feels like he's another one where he should be like 30, but I kind of forget, he's I don't know how much tread on the tires he has left necessarily, but he's not Zeke's age. He's not quite there yet. While he's been in the NFL for a while, I do think he can still, especially in this type of offense, what he did in Cincy, it was with, a gunslinging quarterback. They had plenty of weapons to pass to, but he still got plenty of work on the ground and a little bit through the air. So I do think that he's going to be a bit of a safety blanket for Stroud if he even needs that. And I think he's going to get probably like similar volume, even if it tapers down a little bit. Hopefully that just allows him to, stay healthy and maybe trickle back into like the RB2 territory. But, if people are getting scared off of, Joe Mixon's falling off, then I'll take him.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a good value, especially with all the offensive pieces they got there. Colts, I got Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, another one. He unfortunately suffered a little bit of an injury. I forgot what it was, but Alec Pierce, I think this is time for him to step up. Currently in the wide receiver 2 role, Pittman getting a lot of the attention. They have a good duo or trio of tight ends, but not any of them that you can really trust or one that I would trot onto my fantasy roster weekly without any problems. So Alec Pierce is one that he's it's tough because like we don't know exactly what we're going to get out of AR. But if for any reason AR goes down, they got to throw in the statue of Joe Flacco back there. He's going to be looking to throw the ball, and maybe Pierce bumps up a little bit more then, or maybe AR just can throw the ball over the field and get everybody involved. So I want Alec Pierce.
Yeah, same thing. For me, it would have been Josh Downs. I really like the player, but obviously the injury, I want to say it was like a high ankle sprain or something like that. So, out for weeks, depending on, when he actually can get back, rehab and all that. But Alec Pierce, I mean, I know him as the guy that made Desmond Ridder look good at Cincinnati. he is the only, like, when people kept talking about Desmond Ritter in college, I was watching the game. I would watch his games, and then I would look and be like, well, yeah, it's Alec Pierce. It's the guy on the outside who's just making absurd catches. Like, I understand he's not a de facto like alpha number one receiver on a team, especially with Michael Pittman being there. But having those two on the outside, I think, is pretty tremendous. Especially not super high on AD Mitchell, but I do think if he's more of a complimentary guy with those, I think that's a good role for him to be in. And I think Alec Pierce can step up, and I know he's had years to step up, and he hasn't quite fully done it yet. But now he has the quarterback of the future there throwing it to him, so hopefully they can piece that together.
All right, and the last one we got here, or no, not the last one. Sorry, we got two more teams. I got the Titans with Tyjae Spears. Obviously, they lost Derrick Henry, and you're not really going to replace Derrick Henry's production. You're not going to replace Derrick Henry's touches, but they're going to try to with Pollard and Tyjae Spears. I think things are going to be a little bit more open for whoever's running the ball. Pollard seems more of like the third down back and the pass catcher, where Tyjae Spears is going to be more of the runner. But with the trio of wide receivers that they got, a second-year quarterback that hasn't played a full year yet, so essentially a rookie if you want to look at it that way, relying on the run, and their defense isn't – it should still be okay, but it's not going to be as good as it has been. I think Spears is going to be heavily evolved, and I think he's going to be a steal wherever he's going.
Love Tyjae Spears. I mean, the guy has no ACLs. He's old for a running back coming into the NFL, and he's just still running all over the place. So love him as like a 1B to Pollard, because I do think it's a true 1B instead of a 2. So my guy is Tyler Boyd. He's coming over from Cincinnati following his coach. I do think he ends up fitting into a similar role, and he is amongst a couple of old heads in terms of his fellow receivers that are the other starters there, I guess outside of Treylon if he's going to be starting. So Tyler Boyd, kind of just the tried and true. He can be the third wide receiver whenever he's needed to. He can step up and take on a higher volume. And I do think that a big piece of that, again, was the coach trusting him and having worked with him, have coached him before. I think there's going to be a lot of trust and faith put in him to help grow and improve Will Levis's skill set at quarterback.
Yeah, they're all going to help him out. And then for the Jaguars, I got Christian Kirk. A little bit of a cop out, I guess, but he's going behind Etienne and Ingramar, so it's not definitely not the top target that's going to be on that team as far as like what people are thinking for ADP. But Christian Kirk, I think he gets back to what got him that big contract that the Jaguars gave him. I said it in one of my group chats that Ridley had a good year. He had over 1,000 yards. I think he had 8 or 9 touchdowns, but I think he kind of just threw off the chemistry of the Jags. I think he got his personal stats. He ended up going to Tennessee, obviously, but I think it just threw off the Jaguars' offense altogether. Now that he's gone, they got Christian Kirk, they got Gabe Davis, and they just drafted Brian Thomas Jr. I think Kirk could step back into that wide receiver 1 role on the team. And just kind of be because he's a good route runner too. He could kind of just be like a safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm with you. He'll be the target getter there. And my guy actually I picked is Gabe Davis. I remember when it was, I guess it would have been 2 years ago when he was coming off of the playoff performance, the multi-touchdown.
Mm-hmm. I
forgot how many fantasy points. I think it was like 50 points. What it would have been if it was like within the fantasy season. And people were just losing their minds. Like, oh my God, this guy next year. It's like, no, that's what Gabe Davis, the best thing that he can be in a single game. He's not that over the course, like averaged out over the course of a season. And he, of course, proved that the next year by just being Gabe Davis. But I think that's okay. Like, I know what I'm getting in Gabe Davis. And if he's going to be drafted as like the third wide receiver on this team, I'll take that value because I do think he's going to finish ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., a guy I'm not tremendously high on, at least for what he is now. Again, he could develop, I know that kind of skill set. If it's a little bit raw and unrefined as of now, I mean, he's a freakish athlete. So again, we've seen this before at wide receiver. If he refines a skill set and it works out, great. If he doesn't, he's just another name that's never quite became what we thought he could be.
Yeah, no, I like Davis a lot. Obviously, coming from Buffalo. He was definitely hit or miss. But if you get him on a hit, that's definitely that could be a winning week. Going into the NFC, we'll start with the NFC East. Try to blitz a little bit of these. We got about 15 minutes left. We'll probably go overtime, but that's fine. Hopefully Jeff pays us. I got the Cowboys, Eagles. One of my surprises is the Commanders. I think they could take the 7th seed in the NFC, and then the Giants. And the Giants are my Patriots. I think the Giants are going to be a bottom 3 team, picking 1, 2, 3 overall in the 2025 draft.
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm with you on the Giants. I think I have them as the same record with the Patriots there. But I do have a switch up though. I do have Eagles, then Cowboys. I do have Commanders as well. I think technically wins wise, I think they'd fall out just outside of the wild card, but they're like a win. I think a win away from like competing for that. So definitely in the mix there. But
all right, and then getting into our players that we like. He's been mentioned multiple times, I think by me actually. I drafted him on, or no, I didn't because I wasn't on the East show. But the Cowboys I got Jalen Tolbert, with or without CeeDee Lamb. I think Tolbert is going to be effective in that offense. I think he's going to be the number 2 target for all pass catchers. I think he's going to be. I mean, and Dak is perennial 4,000-yard thrower, 30 touchdowns, 30 touchdown thrower, and I mean, and their run game isn't what it has been in the past. So it's like they're probably going to throw it even more. Dak's also playing for a record-breaking contract, so we'll see what happens there. But Tolbert, I definitely like throwing some draft picks at him, and he kind of just falls into that Joshua Palmer area for me. Like I'd like taking him. I think that he could be. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is in his way, so he's not going to be the guy, but I think he could be a guy.
100%. Yeah, between him and Cooks, I'm curious to see. I think Cooks actually is injured at the moment and might miss a couple practices. So this is Tolbert's time to, chance to rise up there. My guy is Jake Ferguson. I believed in him last year. He climbed the ranks and finished inside the top 12. I think he can do that again. I think he's being viewed as like tight end 9 or 10 maybe, and I think he can finish as like the tight end 5 or 6. I don't think that's not an insane jump. I think maybe you look at just the number. But I think we know what the value is when you get into the top 5 or 6 or so for tight ends. And I think it's just such a safe floor for him because he's going to be the de facto second target. And the touchdowns have been there before. And I think they can continue to be there with CD being the 1 and Ferguson likely being the second target.
All right. For the Eagles, I got Kenneth Gainwell. This was a tough one. I think this was like the last team I filled in. Obviously, they got A.J. Brown. They got Devonta Smith, and then they just traded for Jahan Dotson earlier today, a division trade there with the Washington Commanders. But Gainwell, he's got a lot of familiarity with the offense. I think they got new coordinators, so it's not like that familiar. But behind Saquon Barkley, I mean, Barkley's obviously he's going end of the first, early second in fantasy drafts, but Gainwell's probably one of the best cuffs to have. We've seen Barkley miss some time. It's a lot of tissue time that he's been missing too. So Gainwell could step in if anything happens to Barkley, or Barkley's not going to get 100% of the workload. I think Gainwell is going to be the second guy up. He's going to be in there. The O-line is arguably a little bit worse, so it's not the not the greatest situation, but it's still going to be like a top 10, top 15 offensive line, and I think anybody that they throw in there could be able to run behind it. So Kenneth Gainwell.
Same guy for me. I kind of view him almost as like the Justice Hill in Philly, except maybe even more so favored by the coaching staff. I know we saw the frustrating usage weeks 1 and I think 2 also last year when we were like, but you have DeAndre Swift, so what are you doing? That ended up fading and DeAndre Swift took over. But overall, I mean, we know they like him. Boston Scott, the giant killer, is no longer in Philly. I know they drafted Will Shipley, but Kenny Gainwell, it's his job in the second spot securely.
Yeah. For the Commanders, went with one of their running backs, Brian Robinson. I think he's a 250 rush guy. He's just going to ground and pound it. It's another one of the situations where it's a young quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Daniels, obviously, he has the ability to run, could vulture some touchdowns, but Robinson still has double-digit touchdown potential. He could get to 1,100 rush yards, 12 touchdowns, and Jaden Daniels could still rush a couple in himself. Eckler doesn't scare me at all. I'm not really too worried about him. Obviously, it might be an upgrade from Antonio Gibson. This was another, not even an argument, but there was another discussion I was having in a chat where I was comparing Eckler to Gibson, and they're essentially the same player except for Gibson fumbles more. So like I think they're just upgrading in a sense where they're not going to turn the ball over as much if the ball's in Eckler's hands as opposed to having Gibson. But Brian Robinson is still going to get his. He's been going after guys like, I forgot, but I was just doing a draft a couple days ago and I noticed that Robinson was just so far down, and there was guys in sleepers queue, in sleepers order, that were above him that I was just like tilting my head at. But Brian Robinson, I'm trying to grab him wherever I can.
The exact same. It's going into the offseason, once they paid Eckler again a decent amount of money. But I feel like some of that, and I have nothing to base this on, that veteran leadership from Eckler, he's a steady force. He can be helpful to the rookie quarterback. He's a pass catcher. I think he complements Brian Robinson tremendously well. And like you're saying, I think certainly a more sure-handed guy. I did like Gibson a lot, but never quite fully panned out after those first couple seasons there. But yeah, Brian Robinson, an absolute stud and the RB1 in Washington, as far as I'm concerned.
And then for the Giants, Devin Singletary, mentioned him multiple times on this show. There's really not a threat behind him. The offensive line is probably, it's not awful. They definitely got some pieces on the offensive line. But with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock as your quarterback, I think that I definitely trust Devin Singletary to get. I mean, we've seen him do pretty solid in Houston, and they actually had weapons in Houston, and they got wide receivers in New York. But I think that Singletary is going to be as long as he doesn't get hurt, I think he's going to be a value.
Well, that's absolute slander saying that Tyrone Tracy is not behind Devin Singletary, but I will jump over to Wan'Dale Robinson. I really hope he can put it together this season. If for anything, just be healthy. I understand he still has Daniel Jones throwing to him, and that could be a bit of an impediment for actually getting production. But I think he can kind of complement and work off of Neighbors tremendously well. Neighbors can be off on an island and just be cooking DBs by himself. And I think that's going to open up the middle of the field for Wan'Dale Robinson, who can create separation underneath and provide a bit more of a security blanket, where you have a rookie tight end, Theo Johnson, and Daniel Bellinger, who he had one season kind of sort of a couple years ago. But really, that's the middle of the field target, and the second wide receiver is Wan'Dale Robinson for sure.
Yeah, he's just the injury has been kind of his Achilles heel. Going to the NFC West, this is going to be the surprising one. You ready for this? Got the 49ers in second place. I got the Rams in first, Cardinals in third, Seahawks in fourth for the NFC West.
Oh, man. Well, I have Niners, Rams, and then I have Seahawks and then Cardinals. They're just a one-game difference, the last two. I do have the Rams as being the leading wild card. So record-wise, they would be the first wild card there, which I don't know if that matters of who they play, but I could definitely see them bouncing back.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it just depends on, obviously, I mean, losing Donald is a huge deal, but they addressed, but they had a lot of draft picks this year, or they had the normal amount of draft picks this year, as opposed to the previous couple of years where they haven't had any draft picks. But they used those draft picks on defense. I think they got Fiske, they got Jared Verse, I believe. And they brought in a couple secondary guys. I think they brought in Tre'Davious White too. So they definitely helped out their defense. The offense can put up points if needed. And all those points are going to be coming from the health of Matthew Stafford. That's the guy that I chose. As far as fantasy goes, he's not a rushing quarterback, so that's why he's not taken as high as these other guys. But he has 40 touchdown potential, 5,000 yard potential. He's got Puka. He's got Cooper Kupp. He's got the guy that I think that you chose. So, which is why I didn't choose him actually, because I figured you did. So I wasn't going to say him. But yeah, he's got Kyren Williams out of the backfield, Blake Corum out of the backfield. I think if he plays all year long, the Rams could be good, and he's going to be a quarterback one even without the rushing.
Yeah, I mean, if he's got his health, and I think this is the best group of weapons he's had in a little bit, just in its totality between the wide receivers and the running backs, but also the tight end, also Colby Parkinson. I You would think he's paying me to say his name the amount of times I've said it on podcasts, but I do think he has a tremendous upside. I mean, 6'7", 250, just an athletic marvel. Not a Kyle Pitts level marvel, but a more normal human type of marvel. He can work at all levels of the field, obviously a complete red zone threat. So I think he can be a tremendous piece for them as they're, we know they're going to be pushing it down the field with Kyren, with Cooper Kupp, with Puka Nacua. So the touchdown upside is huge for him.
Yeah, I've because of just talking about him, I've taken him a few spots between like probably the last like 2 episodes and most recently any draft that I've been grabbing him. My 49er is Elijah Mitchell. Another team was really hard to do. Can't go with IU. Can't go with Debo. Can't go with CMC. Purdy probably could have been one, kind of the same situation as Stafford with all those pass catchers and all that stuff that's on the team, and even the better running back as far as receiving goes. But I went with Mitchell, another kind of like another Saquon Barkley situation with Kenneth Gainwell. Just a guy that he should see the field a little bit more. And CMC, I believe, is on the cover of Madden, so I'm playing the Madden curse.
Smart. Well, I almost picked Elijah Mitchell. I ended up actually picking Jordan Mason. It may just be for picking the more obscure one. Elijah Mitchell, I remember his rookie season and what he did, and of course being unseated or supplanted, whatever you want to call it, by Christian McCaffrey, understandably. But he's just cannot stay healthy, and I believe he can turn it back around. But if he can't, for whatever reason, I know Jordan Mason is someone who can step up and not do quite the same thing. But I know the 49ers are very savvy with how they use their running backs, as you can see in there, and of course what McDaniel, a disciple of that offense, does there in Miami.
For my Cardinal, I'm with Michael Wilson. I think that this is a bounce back year for Kyler, getting Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5th overall in the draft, or 4th overall, and then getting or having Trey McBride being just ascending into the top half of tight ends and potentially being the top 5 tight end. I think it's going to open up things for Michael Wilson. I think he's going to have now. It could be Dortch, could be Wilson, and they also brought in Zay Jones, I believe it was. So I mean, there's definitely it's not like he's the clear cut number 2, but he's been there obviously throughout the past year. Was a rookie last year, had a little bit of field work last year, but I think he takes a step up, and he's a guy that potentially could throw in like your deeper leagues like as a second flex.
Yeah, I hope he can really, kind of pull it together. And there was a lot of excitement when he was coming into his rookie season. So hopefully Marvin Harrison coming in can help take a little heat off of him. My guy is Greg Dortch. I know a lot of people have just been thoroughly enjoying the offseason hype for Dortch. And I'm not saying it's going to be anything crazy, but I think simply from a PPR standpoint, who doesn't love the slot guy who, is it meaningful yards for the team? Maybe not, but he'll have a couple of games here and there where he can get probably close to like the 6 to 8 target range for no reason, and put up a decent flex type of play. The dynamic will be a little bit different with Marvin Harrison being there, and of course a full healthy offseason for Kyler, and he's ready to roll. So we'll see, but Greg Dortch, a sneaky flex play.
Sneaky flex play indeed. For the Seahawks, I went with their wide receiver 3 on the depth chart, but I think he's going to be wide receiver 2 on the depth chart, JSN. He's going into a second year, one of the best route runners coming out of his class. He's got good hands. We kind of snapped back to reality last year with Geno Smith. After the year before, they got him paid a little bit. But I think that the worst case scenario could be the best case scenario where Sam Howell comes in and he starts feeding all the Seattle Seahawks wide receivers. I think JSN jumps into that number 2 role. He could even because DK Metcalf isn't necessarily a volume guy. He's just a big play and touchdown guy. JSN could actually lead the team in targets and receptions in a crazy world, and that's not impossible.
Yeah, definitely. And with the help of those three kind of helping to push the ball down the field, hopefully a healthy Geno Smith. If not, I think Sam Howell can step in and do plenty fine. He was, of course, traded for in the offseason by the new regime, so he likely is the heir apparent there for them. But the one that I went with is Noah Fant. I know that his usage has been a bit up and down the last couple of years. Last year, I think didn't even have a single touchdown, if I remember correctly. But I do think that it's the ship will right for him a little bit this year. I do think that the touchdowns are going to come a little bit more. And I do think that in that kind of that group of the Tyler Conklins, the Noah Fants, when you're picking those later guys, I think he's one that's worthwhile to pick as if you wait for tight end as like the one of a couple that you decide to stream. I think he'll be a safe play for a couple of weeks, and you just have to be really, really smart to know when that's going to happen.
Yep. All right, moving on to the NFC North. I have the Lions, the Packers, the Bears, and the Vikings.
Exact same.
Same. All right. Yeah, not a lot of not a lot of changes there. I think it's kind of 1A, 1B with the Lions Packers. I think the Bears improve heavily with Caleb Williams and in a new regime, and I think the Vikings just maybe they're competitive. Their defense isn't as good. Their quarterback kind of took a downgrade with Kirk Cousins not being there anymore. The Lion that I'm going with, I've taken him in a lot of drafts, and I took him in our guillotine league that we got, but he got taken from me, Jameson Williams. I think, and again, it's a Matt Stafford situation all over again, where you got Jared Goff has 4,500 yard potential, 35 touchdown potential. JMO served a suspension last year for gambling. He's back. He should be the clear-cut wide receiver 2, maybe the third target because they got Laporta there, but the wide receiver 2 overall in the depth chart behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. Big play guy. He could reach 8 to 10 touchdowns. He could basically be like what a full healthy Mike Williams was in with the Chargers, if that even happened. But he could be like what Mike Williams was with the Chargers. Just big plays, big touchdowns, and doesn't need a lot of targets to do it.
I really hope JMO can finally put it all together. I think this seems like the first season where the stars might actually be aligning for him. No real threats added in the wide receiver room. And that's actually one of the people I'm mentioning is Khalif Raymond. He is now the de facto wide receiver 3. I think that was already the case anyway. But he's a kind of a steady PPR force there. And he's not the sexy look, but he's another kind of just Greg Dortch level flex type of play just to have if you ever would need that throughout the season. Again, someone you could likely just pick up off of waivers in redraft leagues.
All right, my Packer, I'm going with A.J. Dillon. They both him and Aaron Jones both hit free agency. Did Aaron Jones hit free agency? I don't remember. I know he's not there anymore, but I don't remember if he hit free agency. But whatever, A.J. Dillon, they brought him back, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So they brought back A.J. Dillon. They did bring in Josh Jacobs, which is kind of scary because Josh Jacobs is the kind of guy that could just take all the carries. He's gonna end up being the bulk load, but AJ Dillon could steal a few touchdowns at the goal line. Big body, big legs. Not a sexy pick at all. Just a guy. He's more of like a stash than anything. A guy that if Josh Jacobs gets hurt, he's a guy that you want. He has had some chances to kind of be the guy with Aaron Jones banged up a couple times in Green Bay and really didn't impress. Really didn't show like why should I have him on the list, but. It was hard to pick one of their wide receivers, so I just went with A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, I mean, I know they waited. They eventually brought it back in the offseason. Marshawn Lloyd's had a little bit of health issues in the offseason, so I think that is maybe the one boon for Dillon, the familiarity, and as far as I know, the health. So that could give him some opportunities there. I went for one of those receivers in Dontavian Wicks. I think when people talk about the depth of that wide receiver room. Hopefully Watson has figured out his unique offset hamstring issue of whatever that problem he had that kept creating poles. But whether he does or does not, I do think Wicks is still going to be involved. But certainly if Watson were to go down, really any of the other ones were to go down, Wicks is going to be immediately inserted into the lineup. And he showed last year as a rookie, he can step in and immediately produce.
All right. And then for the Bears, I'm going to break Jamie's heart and go with Khalil Herbert and not Roschon Johnson. I just think he's one of the better handcuffs to have. He's a guy, he will be involved with or without an injury to Swift. He's going to definitely be back there helping out Caleb Williams. He's a good running back overall. He's not a scrub. He's not an AJ Dillon. He's definitely a good running back, and he could be. I think he could have a good year even if Swift is healthy for the whole year, and that's asking for a lot.
Yeah. Well, I also picked Herbert, and somewhat selfishly, it was because I was hoping that he gets traded to the Cowboys or something. The rumblings have been strong that they keep saying that, oh yeah, like he's doing well in the preseason. He's doing what he always has. I mean, like he has the home run ability, and that's kind of his calling card. And he's shown it in spots here and there. I understand why getting DeAndre Swift, shoring that up, surrounding Caleb Williams with even more weapons. I get it, but Khalil Herbert, I think he deserves a shot.
Definitely. And then for the Vikings, I went with Jordan Addison. I think the chalk would have been picking a tight end that wasn't Hawkinson because Hawkinson's going to be missing some time. But I went with Addison. Obviously, when you got a guy like Justin Jefferson on the other side, things are going to open up for you. Addison, of everybody that I've named, he might be he may be the highest ADP, I believe. I don't know. I didn't write down the ADPs. But I mean, he's definitely he's not somebody that's going in the double-digit rounds or anything. But he's definitely going. He's up there. With the injury to McCarthy, we kind of know that it's going to be Darnold for the most part for the year, barring anything else that happens. But like, there's not that question mark of if McCarthy is going to take over at week whatever. He's not, because he's hurt. Darnold should be the 17-week guy. There's been a lot of good stuff said about him in camp. People saying that he throws a really good ball. They've been hitting Addison and Justin Jefferson deep. So, I mean, it could be a sneaky good passing offense. Obviously, we've seen some bad Sam Darnold play, but I think Addison and Jefferson should definitely help him out.
Fingers crossed Darnold can figure it out there in Minnesota. Yeah, he has had some he is a poor man's Ryan Fitzpatrick, in my opinion. That could be very good or very bad depending on the week. But yeah, tight end wise, it's not who I'm picking, but Johnny Munt, I would say, would be the one to get early in the season. He had a little bit of pass catching work last year when there was the injury with Hawkinson, and Josh Oliver was not the one getting quite as much work. But my guy is actually going to be Ty Chandler, backup running back. So I know that they did still get Aaron Jones, and he is clearly slotted ahead of Ty Chandler. I'm not saying he shouldn't be, but age for Aaron Jones, an injury in the last season or so. Healthy now, as far as I know, but Ty Chandler has shown to be a good handcuff just as it is with a healthy back in front of him. But God forbid, if anything were to happen to Aaron Jones, I do think that Ty Chandler is a good all-around back to step in, and he is that weekly upside to where if you were going to get a handcuff, you will want to have him to get those. You could actually plug him in as a running back versus just the flex, I would say, and redraft for some weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And then the final division, we started with my division. We're going to end with yours. The NFC South, I'm going to need you to try to figure out your fireworks because I got the Falcons winning the division, and then I got the Panthers in second. There you go. Perfect.
There we go.
I got the Bucks in third, and then the Saints coming up the rear. What do you got?
So I'm a little less optimistic on my team, but I do have them tied. So I have the Bucks winning. They have them a game ahead of the Falcons, and then I have the Panthers and Saints. But I do have the Panthers and Saints with the same record. So I guess it'll just end up with Panthers having the tiebreaker, which they also probably won't get anyway, but whatever.
All right. So for my Falcons, we might have the same player. We've talked about him on a couple episodes ago, Darnell Mooney.
There you go.
Going with Mooney with he's should be the wide receiver 2, potentially could even be the wide receiver 1. We don't know what we're getting with a Drake London and Kirk Cousins connection. We don't know what we're getting with a Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts connection. Mooney was brought in on a 4-year or 3 or 4-year deal. I forgot what it was, but just this past off season, he basically got whatever Gabe Davis got with Jacksonville. I do remember that, but he's getting a nice chunk of change. He's going to be involved. He does have big play ability, and again, like I said, he could end up being Kirk's favorite target.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk propped up KJ Osborne to some degree. Like, you're going to tell me he can't get Darnell Mooney going. So I definitely trust that, especially once Rondell Moore went down. I don't think that they were necessarily competing with one another. I think Mooney is going to end up working more on the outside, as we've seen the last couple of years. He got a little more away from his outside work and was 60-40 or more 50-50 with outside in the slot. He's meant to be outside. That's what he did at Tulane. That's what he needs to do now.
You got Mooney too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then for my Panthers, because that was my second team, I got Jonathan Brooks, a stash there. We don't know what's going on with Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders is going to end up not being on the Panthers within a week or two. Chuba Hubbard is probably the guy right now. I think Jonathan Brooks is going to be in that. Just like we talked about Jalen Wright with Miami, but Jonathan Brooks has a faster path. Unfortunately, his path is just getting off of injury as opposed to just fighting with three other guys. But once Brooks is healthy, they might ease him in a game or two, but I think he's going to be the RB1 for this team before the season is over, maybe halfway through the season, and not look back. It's going to be definitely a guy that in redraft I'm taking him. If he has a PUP or IR icon next to his name, I'm throwing him on IR and just stashing him. If somebody's asking me what I want for him, I'm saying I don't want to trade him. I'm just going to grab him and just wait till he's ready, and then kind of just get that Jonathan Taylor kind of like work it into the lineup and just take off.
Yeah, and cost-wise, I think it's still pretty reasonable. Like, you're not sabotaging your whole draft by having to, like, quote-unquote reach for him. My guy is Chuba Hubbard. So, I mean, he's going to be the one that's going to be stepping in and playing the Rachaad White light type of role. A bigger he's quick. He's got decent hands. Not a tremendously efficient runner. Neither was Rachaad White, but he could just handle the volume. And then Dave Canales has mentioned, he's like, I need to establish the run. Everything kind of works off of that. And I think that's going to work to help Bryce Young more comfortable, let him work out of play action more. So, yeah.
All right, coming up third, like I said, I got the Bucks. I got Cade Otton. The tight end there. They got, Baker going into another year. Mike Evans is still there. Chris Godwin is still there. Just going to open up some opportunity for the tight end. They did draft a wide receiver possibly two. I know they definitely drafted one. But Cade Otton is just one of those guys where it's not a sexy name, but he could finish as a top 10 tight end in some weeks, and then he's going to have some tight end 40 weeks and maybe not catch a ball or anything like that. But he's basically just a perfect stream play for tight end. You don't have to hold on to him all year. You don't even have to draft him. You could probably get him after the draft. I know he is being drafted as opposed to some of these other guys, but you might be able to get him after like week 1 or 2 when somebody drops him.
Yeah, he's one of those where I feel like we mentioned Conklin and Gesicki. I think Otton's probably going to finish somewhere between 15 and 20, and he's probably being drafted maybe around that, maybe slightly ahead. I'm not sure, but he definitely feels like a pretty safe play tight end. So the wide receiver I'm going with is Jalen McMillan, rookie out of Washington. He is, for all intents and purposes, wowed the coaches this year. Talked about him slotting in ahead of Trey Palmer, so actually being that third wide receiver starting in that formation. Obviously, there's plenty of familiarity with Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, but with Baker Mayfield. But I think when they talk about him stepping ahead of Palmer was kind of coming along last season. So if they're already saying that with McMillan coming into his rookie year, I do think he could get some pretty good slot work very early.
And then the final team, I think they're going to finish bottom 5 in the entire league. It's the Saints. It was another team that was kind of hard to pick a player. I know we all love Rashid Shaheed. I could have picked Rat-a-tat-tat, but I ended up going with Jamal Williams. I don't know why, but I think that I've been hearing some not so great stuff out of Kendrick Miller. Williams was really not efficient last year, but he still is the RB2 there. We've seen him smash in a bunch of touchdowns. Was it because he was just on Detroit? Who knows? Because he didn't have that same kind of work last year. But I think that he'll be okay. And he's definitely a guy that's really not being drafted at all either. Like, people just they're looking at last year. He is a little bit older. I think he's right around 30 or 31. He's definitely not some spring chicken anymore, but he should be the clear-cut RB2 on this team. And it's hard to have a bad team and want the RB2 when the RB1 is Eckler and really not a lot of other great weapons on the team outside of Olave. But I think Williams is worth a stash. And if anything were to happen to Kamara, then Williams is definitely a guy that you could throw into a flex spot.
Yeah, there will be a trivia question down the line trying to ask of who led NFL in rushing touchdowns in the year that Jamal Williams did it, because since then you never would have guessed that was the guy that did it. I do think that, he should be clear cut ahead of Kendre Miller, just in terms of, I know a lot of the talk from Dennis Allen has been just, we know we liked Kendre coming out of college. He's just never healthy. It's like, so far that's been pretty true. But even when healthy, I don't think we've seen anything tremendous from him. And at a minimum, Jamal Williams has been available. But from everything we've seen from Hard Knocks and all that stuff, it seems like a super interesting guy, but just a great team guy. So someone you want to have there. But my guy is Taysom Hill. He is the tight end one on the team. He won't take a meaningful share of the backfield touches, but he will, of course, when we talk about red zone and the valuable touches, he's going to get a frustrating amount of those types of things every now and again. So again, he's a best ball darling. Between him and Gabe Davis are my two best ball guys. I'll get them later, and I will likely win weeks because of how absurdly good they do every now and again.
Yeah, Hill was definitely a consideration for me too. But I was looking at, they got 3 tight ends that any one of them could be the guy as far as the tight end goes. But the thing with Hill is you got some multi-position availability with him. So I don't know if Sleeper still has it, but he definitely has it on other platforms. Jamie, I apologize. We weren't able to get to a lot of your points and stuff today. We did, unfortunately, go almost 20 minutes over, which is funny because we were just talking to Jeff saying how we wouldn't go an hour over when we're in the in-season shows. And the first show that we did since we said that, we were at 17 minutes over our hour limit. So I do apologize, Jamie, for not getting to everything. I tried to throw a couple things that you mentioned up on the screen. Other than that, we should be back with the 3 of us. Well, next time we're on, it might be our new time slot. So we'll keep you guys posted. We're going to be on Saturday nights coming up during the season. So that will be a pre-recorded show. So if you're trying to be in the chat and talking to us, unfortunately, we will not be able to answer anything. But we will be on Saturday.
Jamie.
Yeah, sorry, Jamie. We will be on Saturday nights over the course of the season. But Chew, as always, it's been fun. You want to just let the people know? I mean, we're already 17 minutes over. You might as well just give them your plug.
Well, I have an hour speech I want to give. No, I'm just kidding. Check me out on Twitter at Father Dynasty, and I actually posted my first episode of the Father Dynasty podcast in months at this point. So getting back to that. So definitely check that out over at YouTube.
All right. You could find me on Twitter at Jerry Wilkie FM. Definitely appreciate you guys watching the show. And we're just, by the time we're on again, it's going to be the regular season. So we look forward to seeing you guys, and hopefully the Bills and the Panthers and everybody but the Browns do well.